voters' hands on May 7. By voting for what they believe in, they can transform British politics. They can create a peaceful political revolution. That's what this manifesto offers, that's what the Green Party offers, and that's why I'm saying vote Green on the 7th of May. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much. And now straight on to Caroline. Caroline Lucas.
Thank you, Darren. As Natalie said, this is a manifesto for a fairer society, but it's also a manifesto for a safer planet. Just a few short weeks ago, actually, the leaders of the three main parties signed up to a climate pledge saying that climate change is one of the greatest threats that we face. Well, the Green Party agrees with them. So how odd it is then that none of the other parties have made the environment or climate change a priority in the election campaign so far. Indeed, as Natalie said, they've hardly mentioned it at all. We recognise that tackling the environmental crisis isn't some luxury that is only possible when there are good economic times. It's not something that can be discarded when times are tough, like that extra cappuccino on the way to work. Tackling the environmental crisis isn't a distraction from the economic difficulties we face. It's the way out of them. And it's also an amazing opportunity. Taking strong measures to address the cold homes crisis demonstrates what we mean. Who wouldn't want to live in a home that was warm and dry? Who wouldn't want not to have to worry every month about whether or not there's enough money to pay fuel bills? Around 9,000 people die prematurely each year in the UK because they cannot afford to heat their homes. That's more than the number killed on our roads or through alcohol. That is a national scandal in the 6th richest country in the world. Fuel poverty is blighting the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in this country who are struggling to pay those fuel bills. And it doesn't just cause discomfort, it causes real ill health as well. It's been estimated that cold homes cost the NHS around £1.3 billion every year. It's been estimated that 2 million children are growing up in cold homes. And yet, over the past 2 years, the number of energy-efficient measures that are being installed in UK homes has fallen by a staggering 80%. So we will provide a free nationwide retrofit insulation programme, concentrating on areas where fuel poverty is most serious. And some of those areas I've seen for myself in places like Brighton, where I'm standing for re-election. Our programme is designed to insulate 9 million homes in total, delivered by local authorities, creating over 100,000 jobs. And there'd be an option of a further £15,000 in subsidised loans from the Green Investment Bank for further green energy improvements. We would invest around £45 billion over the course of the Parliament. And that could be paid for by using some of the £12 billion a year that we raise by increasing corporation tax, or we could redirect some of the government's current £100 billion infrastructure budget. Extraordinarily, not one penny of that budget is currently earmarked for energy efficiency measures. So the money is there. The issue is one of political choice. It is nonsense to say we can waste billions on new roads or on HS2, but we can't afford to keep people warm in their own homes. And for every pound invested in home energy efficiency, £1.27 is returned to the economy in terms of the increases and the additions that that spending makes in our economy. That is the only way to permanently bring down household energy bills, not like Labour's temporary energy price freeze. But it's also a crucial way of not just getting our energy bills down, but to the end and ending the scandal of cold homes. But it's also a way of getting our climate emissions down and creating thousands and thousands of jobs in every constituency around the country. That is just one way of creating the greener, fairer Britain that we want to see. And it's an example of the kind of practical policies that the Greens will push in the next Parliament. All of the polls indicate that no one single party is likely to win overall control. That means that the role of smaller parties will be more important than ever. We've ruled out any kind of support to a Conservative government, but we would look at supporting a minority Labour government on a case-by-case basis. That would give us a real opportunity to push Labour on the policies that we know the public wants and which are at the heart of our manifesto, whether that's scrapping nuclear weapons or reversing the privatisation in our NHS, whether that's returning local schools to local control or bringing rail back into public ownership. We have the vision of a fairer, greener world. We have the practical policies to achieve it. And as our membership growth shows, we're gaining in the power to achieve it as well. Thank you.
We have time now for a few questions, and then we'll move on to one-to-one interviews that Natalie will be available for. So I saw Michael first.
Michael Crick from Channel 4 News. Your figures at the back. By 2019, you're only borrowing £21 billion a year. Isn't that incredibly conservative? I mean, if you really were committed to ending austerity, you would be borrowing a lot more than that.
Well, of course, what you're missing from that equation, Michael, is the income side, which is the fact, as I said in my introductory speech, we have to make big multinational companies and rich individuals pay their way. And we've set out in the back there the details of that. We're talking about cracking down on tax avoidance and evasion, and we're really looking at restoring HMRC, the staffing of which has been slashed away, to help achieve that. We've got the wealth tax, which can be bringing in $25 billion by the end of the Parliament. We've got the Robin Hood tax on the financial sector, $20 billion by the Parliament. The figures are all set out there. The fact is we need to rebalance this society so those multinational companies and rich individuals are paying their way in a way they simply aren't at the moment.
That's the answer.
Thank you.
Why not borrow more?
Thank you. You can follow that up later. We want to get a few more questions in, so second question there, yep.
Going to cut. If they're going to cut spending $100 billion on replacing Trident nuclear weapons, we're right there with them. If they're going to cut the national road building programme, we are right there with them. There are plenty of things that we are very happy to see cut, but we want to do it on a case-by-case basis, depending on what there is there on their manifesto. Well, I think certainly any more cuts to the welfare budget would be pretty unacceptable.
One of the things we're focused on is the sort of things we particularly want to focus on is, the disabled have been incredibly heavily hit under this government. The Independent Living Fund, bedroom tax, also public sector workers, the whole public sector cuts. So there's a whole range of things there. And, but I think it's very difficult at this point in time with the great political uncertainty and there's still potential for real political change to actually talk through the negotiations on May 8 and afterwards when there's so much uncertainty.
But that sounds like you were very clear that you do not support any more welfare cuts. There are suggestions. You would support that.
We'd be supporting on a case-by-case basis. If there was a vote on more welfare cuts, I think it's unlikely, but as Natalie says, we can't predict everything in advance, but it's very unlikely the Greens would support that.
Thank you.
Take a question there.
Following from that, Lewis Bourne and ITV News, doesn't that mean you have to be a bit more honest with voters and say a vote for the Green Party isn't necessarily an end to austerity?
No, well, Wes, what we're doing is setting out the vision, the principles, how we make decisions, and that's what's set out here. And this is really, a model of an end to Thatcherism. So many decades on, we've been stuck in that kind of ideology. And what we're doing here is setting out a whole vision of how Britain can work differently, humanely, fairly. And that's something that people, I hope many people, are choosing to vote for, are choosing to support, and will choose to support on May 7. It's a chance of offering something different. And that's something I find out on the doorsteps here in Hackney and all around the country. People are desperate for real change.
Thanks. I'll take another question there.
Thank you, Eleanor Gagnon, BBC News. Welfare currently tops the government's spending. There's the biggest outlay the government has. But there's no detail here on any of the welfare costs that you would have.
Well, I think if you start off on welfare, you're talking about, to start off with pensions. And we've announced that we will have a citizen's pension, which is £180 for singles and $310 for couples. And what that does is lifts every pensioner out of poverty by definition. And we also talk about lifting the carers allowance. There's a whole lot of detail in there. For anyone who hasn't found it yet, it's all there on the website. We are the Green Party, so we haven't given you out the printed versions, but you can find it all there searchably, the PDF on the website. Well, it's all set out there in detail. I think going through detailed numbers at this point isn't the most useful thing. I think the principle that no pensioner should live in poverty and that we should lift the income of carers who are providing so much value, so much essential services to our society are two of the things to focus on.
Right.
Okay, well, one of the things to set out in there is basically we're halving the support to private pensions. Private pensions, are costing the government. The subsidies for private pensions are costing the government a lot. Quite a bit of the funding for that comes from the ending the subsidy to private pensions.
Okay, thank you. We'll leave the formal part of the press conference there. Caroline has to whiz back for important engagement in her constituency. Natalie will be available for one-to-one interviews now. And we've also got one of the co-authors of the manifesto, Brian, here at the front, who will be happy to provide additional detail on costings and so on. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and thank you both to Caroline and Natalie. Thank you.